The story begins in the dark swamp forest, where a group of sailors is assigned to drop a special box, unaware this act would bring misfortune. As strange phenomena occur and the sailors prepare to leave, the engine unexpectedly fails to start. Suddenly they are attacked by a massive force, shaking the boat violently. In no time, vines emerge from the water, quickly dragging a sailor underwater. The other sailors panic, unable to see anything in the dark. As one manages to struggle to the surface, his face showing terror and despair, just as he is about to make it back to the boat, the vines attack again, ultimately dragging him under. Then the surrounding woods start to stir, signaling the next disaster. The sailors hastily use bombs to counterattack. With a loud explosion, the forest also emits pitiful moans. But such actions only anger the dark force. The vines then launch a deadly attack, piercing through the bottom of the boat and directly into a man's heart, cruelly displaying him in the air as a show of power. The next morning, a girl in the town seems to be severely ill, constantly coughing up black liquid, with nosebleed. This is a scene where Abigail Arcane, a professional doctor from the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, goes to Africa to treat a local epidemic. Abigail shows a calm demeanor towards a little boy waving a small stick, and under her gentle comfort, quickly makes the boy lower his guard and takes his sister for treatment to prevent the epidemic from spreading further. Later, her colleague brings news, stating that the headquarters has assigned a new task, discovering an unseen virus spreading in a small town domestically. Abby is shocked when she sees the information in the documents. The place of the incident is her hometown, which she hasn't returned to in a long time. Following the headquarters instructions, Abby and her team quickly head to her birth town. The scenery along the way reminds her of painful memories from her past. Upon arriving at the town's only hospital, they are briefed on the current situation. Seeing the urgency, Abby, acting as the commander, demands the strictest precautions from all medical staff. The CDC team will analyze the condition as quickly as possible to try and find a treatment. Hoping to get through this disaster, Abby enters the quarantine zone to address some annual issues, suspecting they might be related to the condition. She hands them over to the doctors for examination. During their conversation, it's revealed that the child's lungs are also infected. After the doctor leaves, Abby notices a strange man browsing the reports, which puzzles her. She approaches him to inquire about his background. The man responds with composure, explaining he can be of help and requests to see the girl's admission reports. Before he can finish, he's suspected of foul play and is driven out of the hospital. Meanwhile, it's revealed that the girl's mother has passed away early, and her father, an old sailor, is left to care for her. Abby begins her investigation and arrives at the girl's home. At the same time, a police car arrives at the scene. Abby recognizes the officer stepping out of the car as a childhood classmate, which brings them both immense joy. They reminisce about their past fondness for each other. Under the rare openness of the officer, Abby learns that the old sailor was not a good father, often involved in illegal activities in the swamp. The two also notice that something is off. Not only is the front door unlocked, but the inside is overrun with vines. Suddenly they hear a noise from upstairs, where the vines are spreading rapidly, all covered in a disgusting green liquid. The officer pulls out his handgun, ready to find the source of the noise. They see a creepy figure crouching on the ground, seemingly cutting something. When approached, the figure panics and falls to the ground. Abby recognizes him as the strange man who was kicked out of the hospital. He admits he was just collecting samples, trying to find a cure. It's then discovered that the man is dead, his body covered in eerie vines. Everyone is puzzled by this sight, which they've never seen before. Abby also finds a medicine bottle by the sink, suspecting the old sailor died in agony. The authorities then seal off the scene, trying to uncover the cause of the mystery. The strange man's identity is revealed. He's a scientist from the city, hired a few months ago by the town's mayor, Avery Sunderland, to analyze the swamp's commercial value. He discovered a miraculous plant evolution, which he suspects is related to the patient's infections. He invites Abby to visit his lab, despite their awkward first meeting. Seeing that no cure has been found yet, Abby eagerly agrees to go with him. They take a boat into the swamp, reaching a large waterhouse which is the scientist's lab. Inside, there's not only complete research equipment, but also various plant samples collected. In the known world of humans, the swamp is a special element that can easily destroy human genes. During his research, the scientist discovered a strong biological reaction in the swamp. While collecting samples in the deepest part, ordinary vines crawled into his glove box. When he accidentally drops a mutagen into the swamp, the vines grow at an astonishing rate, covering the entire box in seconds, and suddenly launching a fierce attack, as if trying to break through the glass. The scientist immediately releases a chemical gas to destroy the dangerous vines. Abby finally understands that they need to compare the patient's blood reports to find a connection with the mutagen, making it easier to develop a treatment method. After a while, the mayor holds an emergency meeting, where residents angrily denounce the bizarre protection initiated by humans, covering most of the town's area. The swamp's natural ecology, which everyone struggles to live in, has been severely damaged following excessive development by corporations. The mayor then comes forward to calm everyone, explaining the research conducted in the swamp could potentially develop a new type of fertilizer, bringing immense commercial benefits and providing more livelihood opportunities. This could transform the desolate town into a thriving development. After a great speech, he successfully soothes the residents' emotions. As the meeting concludes, the scientist steps forward to explain his findings, suspecting a link between the epidemic and the swamp. The mayor, however, is indifferent, deeming sickness a normal occurrence, revealing he had fired the scientist 2 weeks prior, and dismissively turns to leave. Meanwhile, Abby, on her end, is collecting samples from the old sailor's body, with the scientist coming to assist. They learn the girl's condition is worsening. They remove vines from the sailor's body for examination, witnessing a miraculous phenomenon. The plant cells come back to life. Unbeknownst to them, the vines inside the body are also stimulated, extending wildly and controlling the sailor's body. Simultaneously, the girl undergoes a chain reaction. Suddenly, the sailor's corpse rises, pushing them into a corner. The vines unleash massive roots, and the corpse begins to approach. As they prepare to flee, the vines rapidly spread across the ground, pulling the child down. The scientist intervenes just in time, freeing them from danger. Just then, the girl arrives and faints at the sight of her father turned into a monster. Abby, desperate to save her, braves the danger to scoop up the girl and escape the vine's attack. The scientist stays to confront the monster, throwing pierced alcohol at the vines and igniting a flame to destroy the creature. The vines cease their rampant growth. At the same time, the child suddenly shows no signs of life. Thanks to Abby's resuscitative efforts, she finally regains a heartbeat and breath, and a special fondness begins to develop between them. Abby decides to investigate the old sailor's ordeal further. They then take a boat to a diner, where most residents gather, and find Abby's good friend, Liz Tremaine. Not only the daughter of the diner's owner, Liz is also a well-known amateur journalist in town. Through their inquiries, they learn someone hired several sailors to venture deep into the swamp for possibly illegal activities. And those who went disappeared mysteriously, with the mastermind's identity unknown. Suddenly, the mayor's wife, Maria Sunderland, arrives, asking for a private conversation with Abby. She reveals her daughter, who died while playing with Abby years ago. Though the police deemed it an accident, she still harbors resentment towards Abby, blaming her for everything and warning her to disappear from Marais once the epidemic is over. Faced with her friend's death, Abby is deeply saddened, but realizes she must keep up with the information, wiping away her tears as she heads to the next location. On a stormy night, Abby and the scientist venture deep into the swamp by boat, where they come across a horrifying scene. A boat severely damaged and pierced by massive vines. They find a special chemical box on board, containing a strange yellow agent, likely a device for releasing substances underwater. Back at the lab, the scientist places the agent into the analyzer. As they wait for the results, they share their experiences and learn about the scientist's tarnished reputation, which leaves him feeling embarrassed and regretful. Once celebrated as a genius, he ended up in disgrace until he realized what he truly wanted to pursue, which led him to accept this challenge. Abby also opens up about why she left her hometown, revealing she had a friend from childhood with whom she was close, but an accident before their high school graduation led to her friend's death, which she blames herself for. The analyzer's completion alert interrupts Abby before she finishes her story. The scientist is surprised by the result, discovering the yellow agent in the chemical box is very similar to the mutagen they collected earlier. They suspect it was deliberately placed to cause the epidemic. Abby hopes to take the agent back to the hospital to aid in finding a treatment. The scientist discovers other boxes' locations on the laptop and decides to retrieve all the boxes from the swamp to prevent further infections. They split up to carry out their tasks. Following the coordinates, the scientist disturbs many boxes in the swamp. Suddenly, a boat appears in the distance, shining a bright light on him. Before he can identify the other party, the scientist is shot and unable to escape, leading to a thorough attempt to destroy evidence. The assailants also fire a bomb onto the boat, resulting in a loud explosion. Abby sees the distant firelight, and the scientist with severe wounds on shore realizes he's too injured to move. The surrounding plants quickly envelop the lifeless body, dragging it into the water as vines continuously penetrate the scientist, seemingly merging with him. Abby arrives too late, only finding remnants of the boat, with the villains long gone and no evidence left. As the mutagen spreads in the water, the vines start growing wildly and attack the boat. Abby, seeing the vines approaching, swims desperately to shore. Pushing through the bushes, she discovers a rumored corpse. When cornered, the vines seem repelled by some force, retreating back into the water, and the scientist emerges as a towering plant creature. Terrified, Abby trembles as the creature approaches, but she manages to find an escape route. As the scientist watches Abby flee, he loses consciousness and collapses, ending the story. In the first episode, the swamp was injected with a special mutagen, awakening a dark force. The residents suddenly caught a plague, and a scientist tried to stop it all, only to be killed by a mysterious person. Under the stimulus of chemicals and natural forces, he transformed into a terrifying plant creature. Later, Abby returns to the scene with the police to investigate. They search the forest and the water, but never find the scientist's body. The sheriff, who is also Officer Cable's mother, comes and concludes it's just an accident, a conclusion that greatly dissatisfies Abby. She points out the scientist was investigating illegal activities, suggesting a deeper conspiracy, and warns of dangerous monsters in the swamp, which the sheriff dismisses as ridiculous. Meanwhile, in the swamp, the transformed scientist feels wild and helpless. At the same time, the hospitalized girl seems to have formed some connection, covered in strange plants. In panic, she tries to pull the plants from her skin, revealing the shocking fact that her body has entirely turned into plant matter. The girl feels the same emotions and begins to violently resist on her hospital bed. The scientist then lets out a roar of mixed sorrow and anger before falling into a deep sleep in the swamp. The next morning, the girl starts speaking oddly, saying a man was born out of love and is continuously harming her, which her colleague dismisses as just a nightmare. Then, a strong wind picks up outside, and the girl suddenly feels an epiphany. On Abby's side, she's haunted by a nightmare of her deceased best friend appearing in a terrifying form, seemingly seeking revenge. Waking up scared, she realizes it was all just a bad dream. She then receives a call informing her that the town has more patients, though the girl is stable now, but there's still no cure. Abby is staying at Liz's place, where she meets Liz's girlfriend in the kitchen, witnessing their affectionate goodbye. They discuss the scientist's accident, with journalist Liz suspecting it's not just a simple case. The police have sealed the lab, making it impossible to follow up on clues. Determined to find the truth and a cure for the epidemic, Abby decides to seek help from the mayor, hoping to gain special access, despite Liz's concerns for her friend's safety. Undeterred, Abby goes to visit the mayor, greeted by the familiar butler and welcomed warmly. Seeing a photo of her best friend by the fireplace, she reminisces about happy childhood memories. Then the mayor comes out, treating Abby like his own daughter. The mayor warmly hugs Abby, expressing happiness at their reunion. He apologizes for his past mishandling, acknowledging the pain young Abby faced alone, bearing the wrath of his wife, the mayor lady. He feels immense guilt, not wanting to lose Abby again, making her feel valued and cared for, which touches Abby, knowing the mayor still cares about her. Abby then honestly shares her motive for coming. She believes the scientist's research in the swamp might hold the key to treating the epidemic. She hopes the mayor, who initially established the research facility, would allow her and the county to investigate, as the epidemic continues to spread, risking the small town's control. However, the mayor declines Abby's request, citing business secrets. Meanwhile, the mayor's wife visits a diner to meet a mysterious witch who can predict anyone's fate and communicate with spirits. After much pleading, the witch agrees to perform a seance to summon the spirit of Abby's best friend. The witch is terrified during the seance, screaming in horror, and the mayor's wife is thrown against the door. When the witch regains consciousness, she reveals that a dark force was awakened during the seance, accidentally touching an evil entity. She advises the mayor's wife to let go of her obsession to let her daughter rest in peace, or else her longing could be exploited by dark forces. On the other side, Abby's friend Harlan arrives at the hospital to find the girl has escaped through a window. Abby visits a video rental store, a place the scientist frequented, where the owner, once a prominent actor in the movie Blue Devil, has become obscure with new movie releases. They arrive too late to find clues, as the police had already taken everything related to the scientist a few hours earlier. However, the owner mentions the scientist used the store's equipment, and some swamp logs might still be on the computer upstairs. Abby, searching for information, finds the scientist's logs, where he expresses his fondness for her, bringing sadness to Abby. Meanwhile, Abby receives a text from Harlan about the girl leaving the hospital. On the side of Dr. and Mrs. Woodrue, they're summoned to the mayor's mansion, both renowned memory scholars with significant contributions to science, hoping for continued funding. The couple is reassured by kind words, hoping for a polite conversation. As they're about to meet the mayor, Dr. Woodrue is distracted by a sick tree, instructing the gardener on how to rescue it by watering it with sugar water. The serious talk begins, but the mayor quickly becomes angry, revealing the mutagen cleared from the swamp was developed by Dr. Woodrue. The initial plan was to promote rapid plant growth and drain the swamp water, exposing more land for valuable economic development. Now, with the rising number of patients and the CDC's attention, the mayor blames the mutagen and orders Dr. Woodrue to stay and resolve the issue. The mayor refuses any further funding. On Abby's side, the hospital and officers explain the situation, unclear how the girl escaped, but stressing the urgency of isolating her to prevent more infections. Suddenly, they receive news of clues left by the girl at the docks and rush to the scene, finding her bracelet there, suspecting she might have entered the swamp, a dangerous area, and where her father had an accident, causing Abby great worry. She hurries to start a search. The patrol officer, unaware of the girl hiding on his boat, receives a message from the police to look out for a smuggled girl, but doesn't take it seriously until he spots a suspicious boat, possibly involved in illegal activities. Approaching with warning lights, he demands the crew open a mysterious box on deck. Suddenly, a harpoon pierces the officer, who can't scream out in pain. The ruthless crew, to prevent their crimes from being exposed, plan to dispose of the officer's body in a remote area. They rush to retrieve all the boxes, leaving no evidence behind. Meanwhile, Abby, aboard a police boat, heads deep into the swamp, using this time alone with Officer Cable, who seizes the opportunity to confess his feelings. Admiring Abby since physical education classes in elementary school, considering her the only one he truly noticed. Abby, unaware, sees them just as friends, leaving Officer Cable somewhat disheartened, but determined to continue his pursuit. The plant creature, sensing blood in the wild, stirs as the malicious crew prepare to dump bodies into the water. The girl, witnessing this, flees the boat, causing splashes that alert the crew. After hiding in the forest, she's pursued with a machete by the crew. The plant creature, still adjusting to its massive body, follows slowly. Abby, discovering the abandoned police boat, finds the supervising officer unconscious but breathing. Officer Cable, spotting someone in the distance, decides to pursue alone. The girl, hiding in a deserted houseboat, tries to avoid the crew's flashlight. A knife through the floorboards makes her scream, alerting Abby, who then instructs Officer Cable to return, fearing the girl is in danger. The crew, breaking into the hideout, forces the girl to climb upstairs, leading to a dead end. The crew follows, but a loud noise unsettles them. As they search, the plant creature attacks from behind. The crew member, gripped by a tremendous force, struggles to break free, but manages to retaliate with a small knife, causing the plant creature to release him due to the severe injury. The creature, powered by nature, instantly heals its wounds and unleashes a beast-like roar, commanding the surrounding vines to launch a deadly assault following its dark intent. The crew member is suspended in mid-air by the terrifying monster, but the girl shows no fear. Instead, she begins to communicate telepathically with the creature. Meanwhile, Abby reaches the houseboat in the forest and finally finds the girl. As she prepares to approach, the plant creature rises, startling Abby. However, she quickly recovers and leads the girl away from the scene, realizing the creature's current frightening appearance and choosing not to reveal its identity. As they leave, Officer Cable arrives just in time to help them onto the police boat. When Abby looks back, the plant creature has vanished. Back at the mayor's home, he wakes to find his wife still unable to let go, sleeping in their daughter's room, unaware that their daughter's soul has been consumed by darkness. The wife's lingering grief allows an evil spirit to manifest in the bed. During their boat ride, Abby inquires about the monster, and the girl reveals the shocking truth. The plant creature is the transformed scientist they've been looking for, leaving Abby astonished and struggling to accept this drastic change. The episode concludes, leaving us wondering if the scientist-turned-monster is under the control of dark forces. In the last episode, a witch was hired to summon spirits, leading to Abby's best friend becoming an evil spirit and haunting her mother. Abby learns the shocking truth that the real identity of the creature is the scientist, Alec. On the side of the malevolent crew member, he becomes an evil spirit and invades the scientist's dreams, condemning his cruel actions before attacking him. The scientist wakes from his nightmarish slumber to find the crew member's dead body and feels remorse for his violent deeds. The next morning, Abby, confused about the truth, confides in her friend about the girl's venture into the swamp to help a peculiar human covered in plants and vines, similar to the scientist. Driven by fear and without verifying the identity, the girl flees the scene. Abby receives a message from a doctor and rushes to the hospital to find the CDC has changed its strategy due to the slow progress in treatment. A new team has taken over, with a new commander in charge. Abby, despite having a higher medical degree, lacks experience in epidemic control and reluctantly agrees to assist, fearing she might make a wrong decision by injecting patients with excessive antibiotics. Moreover, the mayor funds this operation, and Dr. Woodrue studies the sailor's body. Abby visits the morgue to find the renowned Dr. Woodrue quickly noticing abnormalities in the body, including parasitic infections and severe mutations, all unprecedented in medical history. During their conversation, Dr. Woodrue's arrogant attitude diminishes Abby's medical expertise. Meanwhile, Liz Tremaine receives insider information in her journalistic circles and threatens a banker for an interview to reveal the secrets of a project and the mayor's misdeeds. The banker, involved in illegal activities and laundering money, panics under the threat. Back at the office, Abby discovers her friend showing symptoms of infection, collapsing in agony and vomiting green liquid. Abby urgently calls for medical help, instructing them to use a special treatment plan. Seeing her close ones infected, Abby feels overwhelmed. She meets with Liz to discuss the situation and decides to sneak into the lab to uncover more about the scientist's research, hoping to find a cure for the epidemic. Entrusting Liz's partner to retrieve clues from the swamp wreckage, they embark on a mission to stop the spread of the disease. An elderly man hunting in the forest hears eerie sounds but sees no game. Investigating further, he finds numerous bugs devouring a wild boar, unaware of the danger behind him, and is attacked by the corpse of a malevolent crew member, eventually dying in the swamp's forest. Dr. Woodrue finds the situation exceptionally unique, with plant ecology developing much faster than anticipated, filled with enthusiasm. Meanwhile, his wife experiences a sudden headache and forgetfulness, revealing her worsening dementia. The mayor and his wife dine at home when a banker unexpectedly arrives, revealing the bank's investigation into their transactions. The banker, having accepted the mayor's dirty money, decides to cut ties to avoid jail, demanding the return of the funds or threatening to expose the debt, potentially ruining the mayor's reputation and halting the swamp project. The mayor's wife overhears their conversation. Abby sneaks into the lab at night, finding many items missing and photographs vanished, discovering an experimental notebook. Unbeknownst to her, countless bugs crawl in, amassing a formidable evil force. The sheriff visits the mansion to investigate a murder, with the mayor falsely claiming ignorance of anyone wanting to harm the scientist. Their conversation turns flirtatious, revealing a secret affair spanning decades. As they prepare for an intimate moment, a door opening disrupts them, and the mistress hastily leaves to avoid being caught by the mayor's wife. The mayor's wife, looking at her daughter's bracelet in the bathroom, sees a bloody vision of her deceased daughter, admonishing her father's infidelity and suggesting her mother should take drastic action, hinting that the family fortune is at risk. The wife's emotions are increasingly influenced by the vengeful spirit. Abby, picking up a bottle from the table, is reminded of the scientist, feeling melancholic. Suddenly she notices bugs invading the room and hears disturbing footsteps outside, as if someone is lurking. An epic figure breaks through the window, seeking revenge, its terrifying appearance ready to launch a deadly attack. Abby lights a flare in defense. The flare's heat causes a reaction, and the plant creature breaks through the floor, issuing a warning with a deep voice not to harm its beloved. Adapting to its new form, the creature demonstrates formidable resilience. When Abby attempt a sneak attack, they realize they can't harm the creature, which then overpowers the attacker with its immense strength, quickly subduing him. Recognizing the attacker as the cruel crew member he had killed, the creature feels a surge of guilt and pities its enemy, warning against the darkness. The bugs disperse, and the attacker's body dissolves into mud. The creature gently approaches Abby, who removes glass from, triggering memories of its past life as the scientist. Abby confirms the creature is the scientist and inquires about his transformation. He recalls a fire and then becoming a monster, now feeling lost and confused about his identity. Abby encourages him, believing there's a way to revert his condition. Their conversation hints at a key to combating the epidemic. The virus isn't attacking, but retaliating against humans. Rushing back to the hospital with a new approach, Abby finds the situation worsening under the new commander's strategies, with Harlan's life hanging by a thread. Despite using strong antibiotics, the virus continues to spread. Abby suggests injecting an inhibitor to suppress the immune system, allowing the virus to coexist peacefully within the body. The commander, unaware of the situation, sees this as a breach of protocol and orders security to remove Abby from the hospital. However, after administering the inhibitor, Harlan's condition stabilizes, proving Abby's theory correct. Meanwhile, the mayor's wife visits her daughter's room for closure, where her husband awaits, apologizing for his past mistakes and hoping to rekindle their love. He sweet-talks her into providing more funding for Dr. Woodrew's research, dreaming of a prosperous future. However, the wife realizes her husband is only after her inheritance, squandering their savings on unrealistic dreams, and decisively refuses, cutting off his financial resources. Abby, drinking to soothe her emotions, meets with Cable, who commends her actions at the hospital, causing her to blush and bringing them closer. Under the influence of alcohol, Cable warmly invites her to dance, leading to a romantic moment in the bar. Meanwhile, the plant creature watches from the jungle, heartbroken to see its love embracing another man, feeling a deep sadness. Meanwhile, the actor, Daniel Cassidy, with a beer in hand, returns to the video rental store for a rest. Planning to turn off the TV, he discovers the witch living in the corner. Fate seems to keep the actor bound to the town, and through the witch's fortune-telling, he learns he has an unfulfilled mission, despite years passing by. Bored with life, the actor is intrigued by the witch's prediction of a different future, now intertwined with Abby's arrival in town. Liz Tremaine's partner, investigating the wreckage of a small boat, finds numerous bullet holes, indicating the explosion wasn't an accident, and quickly informs Liz. The banker, hearing strange noises at home and fearing a break-in, arms himself with a golf club, only to find the mayor emerging, hurling accusatory remarks, feeling deeply humiliated. As the banker tries to explain, the mayor punches him, forcing the banker to retreat upstairs, tension mounting without weapons. The mayor continues forward, unafraid, while the banker, unwilling to back down and threatening to expose secrets, is overpowered and knocked unconscious. The mayor, for convenience, murders the banker in the bathtub, then calmly cleans the weapon and wipes the blood from his face. As he's finishing, the doorbell rings. Rushing downstairs, he peeks through the peephole to see Liz Tremaine outside, suspecting she knows the secret of the loans. The episode ends, leaving us to wonder what other dark creatures might emerge from the swamp tainted by darkness. In the last episode, Abby was attacked at the research facility, but the scientist arrived just in time to defeat the terrifying dark force. To prevent bad publicity, the mayor coldly murdered the banker. Elsewhere, a lumberjack and his father ventured into the swamp, cutting trees just before a disturbing tremor caused by the power saw. Shockingly, a hotel key and several human teeth fell from a tree, unsettling the lumberjack. As they considered stopping work, a decaying corpse suddenly fell on the lumberjack, injuring his arm with teeth marks. After freeing himself, something eerie seemed to enter his wound, and the father and son fled in terror, too afraid to report the incident. The plant creature, sensing the danger, came with its vines touching the corpse, feeling a strong, dark energy. The next morning, the lumberjack shares his troubling experience in the forest while working at a diner. Unaware his wound has been infected by dark matter, causing terrifying hallucinations of a snake in the sink, which only he can see due to the infection. He stabbed his hand without knowing what was really going on. Liz and her father didn't dare to get close, seeing his action and very aggressive movements, and eventually lost his hand. Abby sail into the swamp to help the scientist return to his human form. Suddenly, they are attacked by a possessed creature clinging to their boat, slowly dragging them to shore where they encounter the plant creature. At Abby's suggestion, the creature provides a sample of its tissue, hoping to find a cure. The creature warns of a lurking dark consciousness and the danger it poses when Abby's loved one returns. Back at the hospital, Dr. Woodrue notices the data Abby has inputted into the computer and arrogantly points out a mistake. Upon examining the sample, he discovers animal cell activity within the plant tissue, a revelation that could potentially fulfill the mayor's task faster. To help the scientist regain his original form, Abby agrees to the request, insisting on being informed firsthand of any research findings. Following their agreement, they begin studying the samples. Abby visits the patient ward to find all patients have been discharged, with no relatives in sight. The mayor then announces a celebration party to mark the victory over the epidemic, exciting everyone. The mayor's wife approaches the girl, and in their conversation, she reminisces about her lost child, feeling motherly again, which brings a rare smile to her face. To win over his wife and secure more funding for research, the mayor decides to adopt the homeless girl. The sheriff investigates the lumberjack's death, with no one understanding the situation, making it a peculiar case. Abby, informed by Liz Tremaine, learns the lumberjack had ventured into the swamp the previous night, adding to the town's series of strange incidents, including the sudden epidemic outbreak and the scientist's mysterious revival. Suspecting another swamp-related virus, the old store manager starts feeling unwell, experiencing terrifying hallucinations and hearing eerie laughter, a sign of being infected by the dark matter. Abby notices the old store manager's bizarre behavior, as if he's seeing something horrifying, and he begins shooting at thin air, breaking windows and doors. The sheriff returns upon hearing the shots, demanding the manager to drop his weapon. Under the dark matter's influence, the manager doesn't see anyone else and continues shooting until his gun jams. The sheriff manages to subdue him, but not without getting scratched. Abby administers a sedative from the medical kit, gradually bringing the manager back to normalcy. Also, the sheriff, unaware she has become the new host for the dark matter. After some time, the store manager wakes up in the hospital bed, relieved he hasn't hurt anyone, and the terrifying reality he faced becomes clear once again under Abby's questioning. She recalls her visit to the swamp the previous night, trying to investigate the cause of the outbreak, where she found an old hotel key on the ground. Hearing strange noises, she discovers a decomposing corpse, the cause of death unclear but resembling a gunshot suicide. The plant creature, sensing the swamp's disturbances, finds Abby investigating and explains the corpse harbored a terrible dark matter, now released and preying on hosts' fears to kill and seek new victims. Abby realizes the truth behind the ongoing horrors. Suspecting the sheriff might be the next to be infected, the plant creature warns that the malevolent force doesn't belong in the human world and must be returned to the swamp to prevent further tragedy. Meanwhile, the mayor invites the entire town to a celebratory dinner. The witch, feeling an ominous premonition in the hallway, predicts a storm of blood and violence is about to erupt and instructs the actor to do whatever it takes to protect Abby, as the devil's bargain binding him to the town cannot be broken. The actor, who once made a deal with the devil for fame, has tasted success, but is forever trapped in the town. Abby meets with Liz Tremaine in town and learns about the key found in the swamp, belonging to a long-abandoned hotel with a history of guests going mad and harming themselves. The police and doctors were clueless until the last victim vanished, ending the horror. But Abby realizes the nightmare isn't over. The last victim, seeking to protect everyone, ran into the swamp and committed suicide with explosives. But the lumberjack accidentally trespassed into the forbidden area, bringing the dark matter back to town. Abby rushes to the banquet to prevent the tragedy from repeating. Meanwhile, the sheriff, maintaining order at the party, begins experiencing horrific hallucinations under the influence of the dark matter, seeing her son attacked and stabbed with a knife. In a frantic attempt to save him, the sheriff is overwhelmed with fear and anger, but Abby and the actor intervene, revealing the hallucinations to be an illusion. Despite their efforts, the sheriff, now infected, inadvertently transfers the dark matter to Abby, who quickly leaves the scene to avoid harming others. Alone, she sails into the swamp, calling out for the scientist, hoping to find a cure. As darkness envelops the swamp, Abby is haunted by her deepest fears, reliving her father's violent abuse towards her. In reality, the plant creature stands before her, absorbing the dark matter into itself to protect her, but suffers immense pain in the process. After directing the dark matter back into a decomposing body, the plant creature uses its connection with nature to seal the energy deep underground. In the aftermath, Abby becomes a professional doctor, and the scientist a senior physicist, both unable to explain the events that clearly surpass human understanding. After the mutation, the scientist gains the ability to sense the Earth's consciousness, suggesting the swamp was deliberately damaged, awakening a powerful dark force poised for a terrible retaliation against humanity. The danger is far from over, hinting at new enemies on the horizon. The episode concludes, leaving us to wonder what horrors the rising dark force will unleash next. In the last episode, dark matter wreaked havoc in town, and Abby was nearly shot, saved just in time by the actor. With the plant creature's help, the dark matter was sealed deep underground. Meanwhile, the mayor's wife, over the phone, appreciates her husband's consideration and is very satisfied with their decision to adopt a girl, agreeing to provide more funds for his research projects. Suddenly, she's disturbed by noises from upstairs and the unusual swaying of chandeliers, prompting her to end the call and investigate. During this time, the mayor, claiming to be in a meeting over the phone, is actually having an affair with the sheriff, indulging till dawn. The mayor's wife finds the girl terrified in bed, speaking of a terrifying ghost in the room. Initially thinking it's just a nightmare, the mayor's wife goes to get a blanket, only to witness water seeping under the door. Opening it, she finds the bathtub overflowing with filthy water, and her deceased daughter lying within. Embracing her and speaking words of longing, she doesn't realize the dark matter has attached to the girl. The plant creature, despite gaining great power from its mutation, yearns for its human form and life. Suddenly, the swamp consciousness awakens, binding the creature with vines and exposing it to horrifying visions of corpses, instilling immense fear. After a loud roar, the creature breaks free and is approached by a stranger rowing a boat. Not a real human, but a manifestation of the swamp's consciousness. Explaining the ordeal was to grant new abilities and urging the scientist to keep faith, not letting appearance affect his essence. Elsewhere, the actor prepares to leave town, believing he has fulfilled the witch's task after saving Abby. However, hesitating to leave, he steps out of the car at the town's edge, only for his hand to burst into flames upon trying to cross the boundary, realizing the devil's curse is still intact, forcing him to abandon his plans of leaving. Regretting the deal made with the devil, the actor understands he can't achieve his dreams or escape the eerie town, and his dormant demonic powers awaken, lurking within his costume. After a night of indulgence, the mayor rests, while the sheriff, exhausted, plans to change and head to the station. In conversation, the mayor learns shocking news that Liz Tremaine has found a lead, forcing him to reconsider the murder investigation to maintain credit and find the scientist's killer, causing the mayor some concern. With a somber expression, Dr. Woodrue overhears Abby recording her research diary. Astonished by the plant creature's sample's cells, which not only can morph at will, but also possess infinite regenerative properties, defying biological norms. He inquires about the origin of the plant sample, suggesting that if used wisely, it could spark a medical revolution. During their conversation, he deduces the sample's connection to the scientist. Abby, worried about attracting trouble, does not disclose the full details about the plant creature. Meanwhile, the mayor casually uses the diner's kitchen, claiming a sudden craving for soup, which the store manager finds odd, sensing an ulterior motive. As the town's major landlord and the diner's owner, the store manager reluctantly accepts the situation, hoping Liz Tremaine ceases her investigation into the murder case to avoid trouble for both of them. Liz, determined even at the risk to her father's life, vows to continue uncovering the truth behind the scientist's death, infuriating the mayor. Dr. Woodrue, using a special device, arrives at the research lab and notices unusual footprints that don't seem human. He collects plants from the scene, finding them identical to Abby's samples, and takes them. Under the influence of the swamp's consciousness, the creature learns to use new abilities and communicates abnormally with the trees, revealing images from years past, including a young Abby searching for a lost friend. The creature, about to intervene, realizes these are past events, and the stranger vanishes. Abby, alerted by a phone call, visits a mansion where the girl hums a tune, surprising Abby. Upstairs, the girl's mannerisms eerily resemble the friend's, even sharing private jokes known only between them. Initially thinking it's a prank by the mayor's wife, Abby decides to leave, but the door suddenly shuts, and the friend's ghostly form appears, accusing Abby of a past incident and desiring Abby's demise in the swamp as atonement. After leaving the mansion, Abby encounters the witch, who warns that the mayor's wife is entangled with an evil spirit, putting their lives at risk. It's too late. Under the evil spirit's influence, the mayor's wife hastily departs the mansion. Elsewhere, the sheriff, receiving a tip, ventures into the wilderness. A man, revealing he witnessed the scientist's murder on the night of his death. At the crime scene, he discovers packaging from explosives, leading to the shocking revelation that her own son, Matt Cable, is the murderer behind the mysterious case. The man quickly grabs a shotgun to defend himself, demanding a large sum for his silence or threatening to reveal the truth. The sheriff, feigning distress, seizes the moment to fatally shoot the blackmailer when his guard is down, coldly advising him not to mess with the wrong people in the next life. The girl lures the mayor's wife to the swamp, where the ghostly image of her daughter emerges from the water. Despite her fear, the mayor's wife approaches out of love for her daughter, but the evil spirit takes over, and the girl collapses, caught in the trap. Abby finds the mayor's wife's car by the bridge and is approached by the girl, now back to normal, who warns that the ghost's plan is nearing fruition. Abby rushes to the scene, finding the mayor's wife standing eerily in the water. As Abby tries to intervene, the possessed woman attacks, nearly drowning Abby, who manages to escape the dangerous situation. The creature hears Abby's call and rescues the mayor's wife from the water, taking the blame for the events upon itself and showcasing its new abilities by connecting with nature to reveal hidden memories. The scene shifts back to the day of the tragedy, showing Abby and her friend, drunk and daring, on the bridge. Abby playfully pushes her friend into the water, only to realize something is wrong when her friend doesn't resurface. Panicking, Abby jumps in to save her, but experiences a bizarre occurrence as if her friend is attacked and pulled underwater by an unseen force. Abby initially thinks it's just a joke again, but realizes upon inspection that her friend was dragged away by a dark force, not by her actions, allowing her to let go of her long-standing guilt. Meanwhile, Matt arrives nearby, calling out for Abby, unaware of the recent developments. The creature retreats to observe from a distance, witnessing Matt's caring actions as he covers Abby with a jacket to keep her warm, feeling an uncomfortable twinge of jealousy. Liz, preparing to leave work, finds her car vandalized, with a knife stuck in the tire and two masked figures approaching, hinting at a new threat. Liz Tremaine, undeterred by threats to cease her investigation into the murder case, fights back against her assailants. The actor, happening to pass by, rushes to assist but is attacked by another masked individual, resulting in a severe injury and significant blood loss. The masked men manage to escape the scene, realizing their stirred trouble. Meanwhile, the mayor visits the hospital to check on his wife's condition, but is intercepted by Dr. Woodrue, who reveals that the plant sample Abby obtained comes from a massive living entity. Dr. Woodrue suggests that capturing this creature could lead to groundbreaking advancements and immense commercial benefits. The mayor then introduces a top hunter to Dr. Woodrue to organize a hunting expedition. The episode concludes with the question of whether the powerful plant creature can evade the impending threat posed by the skilled hunters. In the last episode, Dr. Jason Woodrue is gearing up for a hunting expedition. As an experimental subject, Swamp Thing discovers a bound rabbit in the forest and senses something amiss. Nonetheless, he approaches to free the rabbit, but falls into a trap laid by hunters who target him from a distance with tranquilizer guns. Enraged, Swamp Thing forcefully breaks through the sturdy trap. Escaping the range of the tranquilizer guns, Swamp Thing leaves the hunters in awe, realizing they are facing the strongest prey. Even a trap capable of holding an elephant and a dose of tranquilizers meant for an entire zoo prove ineffective against him. Swamp Thing then emerges from beside a tree. The hunters keep firing in fear, but their bullets are ineffective. As they retreat, Swamp Thing uses tree branches to launch a deadly assault, seriously injuring the hunters before they are forced to flee. Elsewhere, Dr. Woodrue concocts a new serum from plant samples taken from Swamp Thing and tests its effects on humans by secretly injecting it into an IV in the hospital. Meanwhile, an actor who is a close friend of a female bartender falls into a coma due to brain injury. The female bartender discovers that her friend's background is very mysterious, with no family contacts in his phone and no hope for recovery. She feels guilty and confesses that this tragic situation occurred because they had offended a mayor. Without evidence in hand and a seemingly compromised system, the truth feels out of reach. Abby decides to confront the mayor directly, demanding justice for her comatose friend, but the mayor, without remorse, admits to his deeds and warns her to leave town. Meanwhile, the two injured hunters are sent to the hospital, screaming about the Swamp Thing attack, which makes Abby suspicious that Swamp Thing might be involved. Yet she believes that Swamp Thing would not harm people without reason. In another part of town, the sheriff, who is also the mother of a police officer, Matt, feels guilty about a murder case. Her son, seemingly indifferent, views it as just one life lost. Shocked and angry, she slaps her son, who then reveals the shocking truth that he killed the scientist on orders to protect his mother from the mayor, who holds a lot of compromising information against her. Seeing her son manipulated, the sheriff starts to harbor thoughts of revenge. As subordinates report back about hunters attacked by a ferocious creature, Matt Cable heads to the swamp to investigate. At the hospital, the staff is unaware that the IVs have been laced with a mutagen by Dr. Woodrue. Soon, the actor begins to exhibit miraculous changes. Alarms beep as Liz notices something amiss. The actor's heart rate spikes dramatically before he suddenly wakes up, screaming in agony as his skin burns like fire, scaring Liz from getting too close. Dr. Woodrue arrives upon hearing the commotion, intending to move the actor out of the hospital to continue observing the changes. Under medical treatment, the reaction to the mutagen intensifies. Meanwhile, Abby ventures into the swamp, calling out to Swamp Thing, believing her love acted in self-defense and had no choice but to retaliate against the hunters. As word of the creature spreads in town, Swamp Thing feels despondent and starts questioning if he is indeed a monstrous entity. Abby reassures him, convinced they can find a cure. Suddenly, a boat appears in the distance, putting Swamp Thing on high alert, readying for battle and hiding in the woods for an ambush. Elsewhere, Dr. Woodrue discusses with the mayor privately. Despite the failure of the hired hunters to capture the creature of the swamp, Woodrue successfully creates a new drug, not only reviving the comatose actor, but potentially curing various incurable diseases, promising immense commercial benefits. The mayor is thrilled, envisioning becoming the world's richest investor. Woodrue is urged to finalize his presentation. Meanwhile, Matt and his partner head to the swamp, discovering gigantic footprints unlike any known creature. Sensing the abnormality, they search along the banks, trying to uncover this mysterious entity. As they delve deeper, something approaches suddenly. It's Abby rushing in, urging them to leave the swamp quickly. Before she can finish, the creature launches a rapid attack, but Abby bravely steps in to stop it, saving Matt from danger. They realize the creature is the scientist, Alec Holland, who miraculously survived an explosion, his body altered by some chemical. Alec is still seeking a cure for his condition, only remembering a shadowy figure attacking him. Unable to recall the assassin's face, Matt informs his partner, maintaining secrecy for Abby's sake. Meanwhile, Mrs. Woodrue is awakened by shouts outside, startled as something suddenly knocks on her window. In a dramatic turn, the actor, Daniel Cassidy, experiences a mysterious mutation, his body engulfed in white smoke and blue flames. Despite the mayor's warning shot, the actor remains unharmed. In desperation, the actor seeks help, but finds none. As the actor's rage intensifies, releasing energy, Mrs. Woodrue intervenes with a tranquilizer, diffusing the tense situation. The mayor, however, is not pleased and insists on continuing his plans, urging Dr. Woodrue to quickly resolve the issue. After a series of trials, Matt finally makes it back to the station, opening up to his mother and preparing for the fallout of his actions, including the potential re-killing of the now hospitalized scientist. The witch, recognizing the actor journey isn't over, prepares to tackle a stubborn demonic curse, readying the actor for more daunting challenges with her potent magic. The actor, battling increasing agony, is infused with a mysterious power, causing the blue flames to dissipate and his condition to stabilize, offering a brief respite. In the lab, Alec Holland reflects on his moments with Abby. Filled with nostalgia yet eager to regain his human form, uncertain of the way forward. He fears that prolonging his monstrous existence will lead to losing his identity, driving a wedge between him and Abby. A deep-seated longing triggers a new ability in Swamp Thing, causing mysterious flowers to bloom, releasing hallucinogenic spores, bewildering them both. Abby, deeply touched, witnesses Alec momentarily return to human form. With this episode's close, the question arises, what new powers will the enigmatic Swamp Thing unveil? In this episode, amidst challenges, a powerful force awakens within Swamp Thing. The scientist displays supernatural abilities. When Swamp Thing sees his human form in the mirror, he realizes it's only a temporary effect. As the effect wears off, he reverts back to his monstrous form. During this brief period of humanity, Abby takes the opportunity to express her inner feelings and suggests engaging in some thrilling activities. Despite their desires, both are extremely hungry after a long day. Alec quickly opens a cabinet to find some long-expired cookies. Suddenly, an unusual phenomenon occurs outside. Dense foliage swiftly invades the house, revealing that Alec not only possesses supernatural powers, but can also control plant growth with his mind. Fresh fruits are delivered by the branches. Swamp Thing tries a chestnut and is surprised by its incredible sweetness. Alec is fascinated by everything and inquires about other abilities. He learns that Swamp Thing's senses are exceptionally sharp. He can hear plants speak and informs Abby of a decaying area far away, overtaken by dark forces, where plants are dying in agony. Determined to cure Swamp Thing, Abby decides to venture into this dangerous zone, where plants might yield an effective antidote. Despite Swamp Thing's objections, Abby sets sail for the decayed land. Meanwhile, the Major plans to meet with an investor that night, while his wife prepares an elaborate party in the hopes of impressing the investor, a gesture that touches her husband's heart deeply. Suddenly, the sheriff arrives uninvited, disrupting the pleasant atmosphere, and requests a private conversation with the mayor. In the kitchen, the sheriff angrily reproaches the mayor, aware of his malevolent nature and involvement in a murder case, which greatly upsets her. She reveals that Alec, the scientist, didn't die but was transformed into a monstrous creature by a virus. She insists on heading to the swamp to take care of Swamp Thing, otherwise the mayor could face imprisonment. The mayor is skeptical but agrees, asking his wife to step out for a while, hoping he returns before the wealthy guest arrives. Back with Abby, she marvels at the mysterious area within the swamp, filled with joy from Swamp Thing's heart, which blooms numerous beautiful flowers, a sight even she, having grown up in the town, has never witnessed. This phenomenon goes beyond scientific understanding, exciting them both. Swamp Thing not only gains the power of nature, but also uncovers deeper secrets, realizing that Earth harbors both light and dark forces that must remain balanced to prevent widespread devastation. As they reach the decayed land, a place marked by human ecological destruction, they face the rising dark forces from the Earth, a reminder of the consequences of humanity's actions. Abby, in pursuit of developing an antidote, disregards Alec's objections and ventures forward to collect plant samples. Meanwhile, Maria Sunderland, acting on a secret plan, visits Dr. Woodrue to inquire about the progress of his experiments, ensuring that with ample resources, the expected results and any side effects are managed. Dr. Woodrue is confident in his work. Maria is puzzled by the conversation, as everything should have been discussed with her husband, Avery Sunderland. However, she takes matters into her own hands, implying Avery might not return and she will assume full control, continuing to fund the research. Dr. Woodrue agrees to attend a dinner meeting to discuss further. On the other side, Sheriff arrives deep in the swamp, her gun loaded, seemingly prepared for lethal action, causing Avery to feel tense and suspect another agenda. During their conversation, the motive for killing Alec is revealed. Alec had discovered illegal activities and was investigating further. Avery worries about his plans being thwarted and considers sending Matt Cable to carry out a hit to cover up the murder and claim it's for the town's development. Feeling guilty, Avery suggests he should be the one to end it all and eventually hands over the weapon to Avery, while the sheriff leads the way to search the area. Meanwhile, Abby feels an unprecedented sense of pressure in the decayed, dark-infested land. Alec insists they can't stay long. Abby, undeterred by the danger, collects samples near a corpse-infested sea, but is suddenly attacked by dark forces, with branches tightly grasping her. With Alec's help, Abby escapes, though she's injured and bleeding. After a quick bandage, they hurry away from the decayed land as violent dark forces approach, causing trees to fall in their wake. Back with the sheriff, when they're exploring the forest, it becomes clear the location was chosen for its seclusion, ideal for disposing of bodies. The sheriff, not one to be trifar, wouldn't let Avery, who used her son, get away easily. Just as Avery is about to shoot, the sheriff stalls for time, and in a moment of hesitation, the sheriff and Matt manages to disarm Avery, ensuring no blood is spilled at the scene. As the wealthiest man, the investor, arrives at the Sunderland mansion and finds Avery absent, he's somewhat disappointed but is warmly welcomed by Maria. Inside, they enjoy a feast. While back at the lab, Alec and Abby return, finding Abby's wounds have worsened, with toxins spreading. Realizing this is the work of dark forces and knowing her time is limited, Abby, an expert in disease, understands she might not make it to the hospital for treatment. Alec quickly focuses his thoughts, and the force of nature heeds his call. Miraculously, through the window, plants laden with healing herbs grow, though the dark force's corruption runs too deep, rendering the herbs ineffective as Abby continues to suffer. As the sheriff, Matt, and Avery Sunderland arrive at a desolate dumping ground, Avery regains consciousness and reveals long-kept secrets, that Matt is his son, placing Matt in a moral dilemma. The sheriff, aware of the truth, has never disclosed it to her son, who is shocked by Avery's confession. A confrontation between mother and son erupts, and Avery seizes the opportunity to attack with a knife. In defense, the sheriff picks up a rifle, shooting Avery in the leg, who then escapes into the water, presumably sinking to the bottom. They quickly leave to seek medical help for her son. Meanwhile, Abby experiences intense pain as the dark force overpowers the ineffective herbs. In a desperate move, Alec uses his supernatural abilities to make the medicinal plants within her body grow rapidly, threading vines in and out of her, successfully transferring the toxin away, cleansing her system. Elsewhere, the wealthy investor grows impatient with Avery's absence. warned by Maria Sunderland about the significance of their meeting. She reveals the miraculous recovery of a brain-dead patient through Dr. Woodrew's formula, securing a massive investment. As Abby slowly regains consciousness, grateful for Alec's sacrifice, they share a moment of love and gratitude. Dr. Woodrew, ecstatic about the secured funding, overlooks the meeting's ethical concerns, focused on advancing his research and treating his wife's dementia. The sheriff, bearing her wounded son, confronts Maria, realizing her orchestration behind the events to eliminate Avery and seize control. Both driven by their motives, they collaborate to remove their common enemy, hoping for a return to normalcy without Avery's interference in the swamp, unknowingly leaving it unbalanced. As Alec reverts to his human form and Abby drives away from the town, she plans to use the collected samples for extensive research at a disease center, aiming to develop an antidote with the resources at her disposal. This episode leaves us wondering about Avery's potential revenge and sets the stage for more thrilling developments. In the episode, Abby Arcane bravely retrieves a plant sample and brings it back to the CDC to research a way to turn her love. Abby delivers the plant samples to the CDC headquarters, where the analytical department conducts a comprehensive test. They warn that the plant is toxic and must be handled with caution. The newly appointed deputy director arrives and continuously reprimands Abby for her negligence, staying in town against orders and not reporting daily progress on time. Local doctors also express dissatisfaction with Abby spending all day in the swamp and only showing up at the hospital occasionally. The deputy director decides to conduct a strict assessment and warns her not to disobey orders again. Meanwhile, on Avery's side, he wanders the forest, disoriented under the influence of dark forces, and hallucinates the sheriff pointing a gun at him. Terrified, he falls to the ground pleading, but the sheriff doesn't fire and mysteriously walks away, leaving Avery confused. As he attempts to follow and confront her, a vine suddenly sprouts, turning into a bloody, monstrous creature that attacks him, then vanishes, making Avery realize it was all a hallucination. Meanwhile, the wealthy businessman interrupts Dr. Woodrew, who is engrossed in his work, emphasizing the project's unique nature that could potentially change the course of human evolution and involve significant commercial interests. To prevent any information leaks, the wealthy businessman uses Avery's wife's real estate to set up a lab, urging Dr. Woodrew to complete the task swiftly. Overwhelmed by his sinister experiences and unable to continue walking, Avery decides to rest on the ground, but sees a plant creature with a menacing look standing in front of him. Back with Abby, she awaits the test results while her friend, Harlan, brings her food, and they happily share a meal. Abby confesses to hiding the truth about the bizarre mutations linked to the epidemic, which is beyond scientific understanding, to prevent the scientist from becoming test subjects. She had gone to the swamp alone for this reason. Avery, after being shocked into a coma, he awakens to find strange implants in his body. Swamp Thing reveals that the plants are not harmful, but are medicinal herbs meant to clear infections and accelerate cellular healing, shocking Avery and making him realize that the sheriff wasn't lying. The scientist not only survives but becomes a terrifying creature, Avery speaking sorrowfully to gain sympathy. However, Swamp Thing steps forward to angrily reprimand him. Avery shows no remorse, only having destroyed the ecosystem, causing dark forces to rise, turning himself into a monster, and explaining the scientist's transformation. Back with Abby, Harlan believed her, and later supported Abby's actions. He would help Abby with what she needed, so that the scientist Alec could return to his human form. Abby was very happy to hear that her friend believed in her, and then hugged her goodbye. Harlan then left, but unbeknownst to Abby, he was kidnapped by a group of people. The Genetic Research Authority fills Swamp Thing with hope, and Avery Sunderland begins to trust him, relinquishing control of the town. A boat is brought nearby. Avery is pleased to see the boat, and promises that Dr. Jason Woodrew will come to assist with the treatment, hopeful for a return to human form. The next morning, Abby Arcane attempts to enter the analysis department to check the report, but finds her access card has lost its privileges, leaving her confused. The deputy director explains that the sample has been isolated, and no one is allowed to view the analysis report, falsely claiming an outbreak overseas. Harlan is sent away early in the morning without explanation. The investor appears from another door, explaining his conversation with Harlan the previous night and expressing clear understanding of Swamp Thing's condition. He hopes to collaborate on treating patients, but is prepared to take drastic measures to prevent the creature from threatening the world. He insists it's not about money and plans to capture Swamp Thing for the lab without performing cruel surgeries. Abby quickly realizes something is wrong, and knowing his bad intentions, declines the investor's offer of cooperation. Abby then leaves intending to help Alec, who seems to be in trouble, leaves a message for Harlan and prepares to head back to the town. Avery visits Dr. Woodrue, revealing his leg wound and a unique healing method, and recounts his experience in the swamp, which has turned the scientist into a certain creature. Dr. Woodrue is unsurprised and revealing that he had received this information. During their conversation, Avery also finally learns who is trying to kill him, a plot orchestrated by the sheriff and his wife, which angers him and drives him to plot revenge. Avery asks Woodrue for help to restore Alec's human form because he feels saved by him. But Woodrue warns that once Swamp Thing regains his human form, he will lose his miraculous regeneration ability and no longer have the special value of saving millions of people, inevitably causing Avery's collaboration plan to fail, and him giving up the chance to become the richest and most recognized man in the world. Hearing this statement, of course, Avery's greedy spirit was reawakened and began to think about getting what he wanted. Later that night, they meet at the agreed location, where Swamp Thing also arrives to keep the appointment. Swamp Thing recognizes the renowned Dr. Woodrue and expresses his wish to become human again. Dr. Woodrue quickly agrees to the request and suggests going to the lab for treatment. However, Swamp Thing cannot leave the swamp and senses an approaching troop through nature's perception. Top mercenaries arrive, each experienced in battle and high-difficulty missions, but they hesitate to attack the formidable creature. Swamp Thing transforms his arms into spikes, threatening to leave the swamp or face death. When the mercenaries launch an attack using freezing gas, many are killed. Avery approaches and picks up a hunting rifle from the ground. After the smoke clears, Swamp Thing launches a barrage of attacks, and Avery takes the opportunity to shoot the unguarded creature, injuring him. The mercenaries focus their efforts and release a large amount of freezing gas, turning Swamp Thing into an ice sculpture, unable to exert his powers. Abby arrives at the scene, finding only ammunition and traces of freezing gas. Abby knew that something happened to Swamp Thing. The episode ends with questions about Swamp Thing's fate. In this episode, the main antagonist initiates his cunning plan and successfully captures Swamp Thing with the help of an elite mercenary team. After some time, Swamp Thing is transported to a secret factory. Inside an abandoned building, a fully equipped laboratory is set up. With the freezing equipment operational, Swamp Thing falls into a slumber and is placed on an operating table. Meanwhile, Abby Arcane visits a bar to seek help from Liz. Abby shares discoveries of large marks in the swamp and significant drag marks. She also mentions her suspension by Avery Sunderland and an unexpected assignment abroad. Abby suspects all this is Avery's conspiracy. Without anyone to aid Swamp Thing, Liz readily agrees to assist in the investigation. They then head to Dr. Jason Woodrue's residence in search of clues. Meanwhile, at Avery's secret lab, Swamp Thing remains unconscious. He's not only restrained, but also loses his regenerative abilities. To prevent any mishaps, the lab is equipped with a backup generator, and they commence the thawing process. A cruel dissection experiment begins. On the other hand, the actor, Daniel Cassidy, regains consciousness from his coma, and Phantom Stranger appears out of the blue. He immediately recognizes him as someone he had made a deal with before. He complains about his current predicaments and seeks a way to break the curse. Phantom Stranger then shows the actor a vision of the future where Abby breaks into the secret factory and meets Liz, only to be surrounded by mercenaries, and both are killed in a shootout. Phantom Stranger warns that this is a future that will come to pass, and only the actor can stop it. Meanwhile, Abby and Liz visit Dr. Woodrue's house, and Caroline Woodrue is unaware of her husband's whereabouts. After entering and conversing, Abby notices a bottle of medication on the table and perceives Caroline's odd behavior, indicative of advanced stage symptoms. Liz, with her keen observation, finds a suspicious blueprint on the table and quietly takes it. Abby's investigation yields nothing, so she looks elsewhere for clues. Meanwhile, Dr. Woodrue begins the autopsy on Swamp Thing. Its skin has abnormally hardened, forcing Dr. Woodrue to use brutal methods to open it, awakening Swamp Thing, who inquires about Dr. Woodrue's actions. Abby then inquires with all hospital staff and learns that Dr. Woodrue hasn't been seen for days and seems to have relocated. From the blueprint Liz stole, they deduce it's a mobile lab and find a recently purchased factory by Avery, matching the blueprint's interior. They then proceed to the site to investigate and search for Swamp Thing. Meanwhile, Dr. Woodrue continues his ruthless autopsy on Swamp Thing, concluding that although its internal organs are protected by roots, they serve no function. Even after removing vital organs like the heart, Swamp Thing continues to function, showing that the true scientist has died, and Swamp Thing absorbed his memories, creating similar organs within itself and developing human consciousness, though it fundamentally remains a plant entity. This revelation shocks Swamp Thing, who struggles to accept this harsh reality. On the other hand, the actor realizes his true mission is to assume the role of Blue Devil to save the women. This revelation confuses him as he believes Blue Devil is merely a film character, and the costume does not grant superpowers. However, the Phantom Stranger disproves this notion by presenting the Blue Devil mask from the movie and demonstrating its magical powers. The Phantom Stranger then releases the actor from his hospital bed restraints and warns him to make the right choice before silently departing. Despite the actor's desire to escape it all, his concern for the women's safety compels him to don the mask, which suddenly glows. The costume emits a powerful energy, endowing the actor with the superpowers of Blue Devil. With newfound abilities, the actor faces the daunting task of infiltrating Avery's secret lab to thwart the mercenaries and save Abby and Liz from their grim fate. Maria Sunderland keeps trying to contact the wealthy investors, but is blocked by the assistant on the phone and receives no responses. Suddenly her husband, Avery Sunderland, appears with a psychiatrist, having obtained an official court order. Maria is then forcibly taken to a psychiatric hospital by medical officers. Meanwhile, Abby Arcane follows the address to an abandoned factory, carefully avoiding guards, and sneaks in through the back door. Suddenly, sprouts grow from the floor, forming a path that guides her. Inside, she and Liz Tremaine and guards come from the opposite direction. As they prepare to hide in the control room, Liz accidentally kicks a metal rod, attracting the mercenaries' attention. Quickly, Abby turns off the power, plunging the room into darkness, but the mercenaries calmly turn on their flashlights and prepare to enter. Suddenly, a loud noise comes from behind, and as everyone turns around, a blue fireball appears, causing screams of agony without showing any figure. The mercenaries panic and start shooting randomly, resulting in one of them being burned to ashes. They then cautiously search for the mysterious attacker. Blue Devil appears again, consuming the soul of one of the mercenaries. His companions try to shoot, but their bullets have no effect. Blue Devil then starts a brutal killing spree, turning the place into a hell on earth. Meanwhile, Dr. Woodrue continues his experiments, undisturbed by the chaos outside. A severely injured mercenary suddenly opens the door, warning of a terrifying demon before being quickly killed by Blue Devil. Everyone is shocked in disbelief at what they see. After Blue Devil leaves, Abby decides to search for Swamp Thing, and they find the situation outside is chaotic, as if a battle had just occurred. They find Swamp Thing in the lab, his body covered in wounds. Abby quickly releases the restraints and turns off the green light, weakening Swamp Thing. Seeing her friend suffer deeply saddens her. Once Swamp Thing recovers, organs that were initially missing are regenerated by plant cells, confirming Dr. Woodrue's theory that he is merely a mutated plant entity. Swamp Thing decides to return to the depths of the swamp to investigate where he was first killed. Abby, not fully understanding the situation, follows him back to the swamp. As they leave the factory, the actor realizes the chaos around him. The factory is filled with corpses, shocking him into fleeing the scene. Meanwhile, Liz returns to the factory to investigate the mercenaries' identities and use the media to expose Avery's conspiracy. Elsewhere, Matt drives on the road, loses control of his vehicle in a confused state, and eventually suffers a severe accident, his fate unknown. On the other hand, Dr. Woodrue returns home with the samples, hopeful to develop a cure for Alzheimer's disease using these plant organs. However, he realizes something is terribly wrong when he finds out his wife has consumed several days' worth of medication at once. leading to excessive side effects and uncontrollable tremors. Avery Sunderland, visiting his confined wife in the psychiatric hospital, admits to bribing a well-known judge to ensure Maria will never be able to leave. Under Avery's questioning, Maria finally confesses her motive behind the assassination attempt she orchestrated, driven largely by a desire for revenge against Avery's betrayals and for secretly stealing her personal fortune for his own wealth and power. Their argument ends in an unhappy separation. On the other side, Abby reaches the depths of the swamp with Swamp Thing, who walks into the water like a zombie, leaving Abby deeply worried on the shore. She can only wait patiently by the swamp's edge. After some time, Swamp Thing reemerges from the water, carrying the corpse that turns out to be the real scientist. This painful realization for both of them confirms that what they thought was the scientist's identity was merely a plant entity, assuming a human form. This event closes the story with deep sorrow and regret, leaving the question of what Dr. Woodrue will do with the horrifying discovery he has made. The actor, Daniel Cassidy, transforms into the Blue Devil and eliminates all the mercenaries, fulfilling his mission to protect Abby Arcane. Swamp Thing then faces the harsh truth that he is just a mutated plant entity, unable to become a real human, leading to his emotional breakdown. Abby continually consoles him, reminding Swamp Thing of the scientist's consciousness within him that has helped the town through an epidemic and saved her life in critical moments, urging him to hold on to faith despite losing his sense of self. Despite not being able to become human, Swamp Thing realizes he can still start anew. However, just when things seem calm, a new threat arises from a military force seemingly out for revenge. Swamp Thing prepares for a fierce counterattack, determined not to let evil prevail again, and drags the bodies into the water for concealment. The next day, Abby returns to the town's cafe and shares everything that has happened with her friends, admitting her brave front in front of Swamp Thing, despite being deeply saddened inside. They both agree to uncover the mastermind behind all these events. Abby then heads to the psychiatric hospital to gather information from Maria Sunderland. On another front, Caroline Woodrue suffers due to a medication overdose, restrained in a chair by her husband, who appears obsessed with his research. He excitedly shows the organ samples containing miraculous cells, convinced that consuming these organs would grant one regenerative abilities and repair the damaged brain. Meanwhile, the wealthy investor hires a private force and acquires a massive arsenal, determined to completely annihilate Swamp Thing, disregarding the potential damage to experimental samples and collaborative projects. Faced with the investor's wrath, Avery tries to prevent the use of heavy weaponry to protect their research findings. Elsewhere, the sheriff receives news of a severe accident and rushes to the hospital. She is relieved to learn that the treatment is going smoothly. Liz, the town's bartender, meets with Daniel, who is now heading to the big city to live as the Blue Devil and continue his fight against crime elsewhere. Meanwhile, Maria Sunderland, forced to consume a large amount of medication, begins to experience delusions and attacks by evil spirits. A witch comes to her aid, explaining that these nightmares are the result of the dark swamp forces she invoked while attempting to contact her daughter's spirit. The witch casts an irreversible spell, and on the wealthy investor's side, soldiers begin their hunt in the forest, tracking Swamp Thing's footsteps and stepping into his territory. They send out a team member as bait, hoping to lure the prey into their attack range. Suddenly, the bushes exhibit unusual activity, signaling an imminent ambush by the prey. The soldiers open fire immediately but hit no target. While reloading, they fall into one of Swamp Thing's traps, and cries of agony echo through the forest. Meanwhile, Abby Arcane arrives at the Sunderland estate only to find she's too late. After the witch's spell, Maria Sunderland is freed from her pain, her consciousness forever lost in a world of illusions, unable to communicate, leaving Abby no choice but to walk away. Dr. Woodrue, on the other hand, turns the organ samples into a grotesque meal and presents them to his wife as Swamp Thing's heart, claiming it contains miraculous cells that can cure all diseases. Despite his wife's panic, Woodrue consumes the sample himself, using his body as a test subject, ensuring his wife's safety before confirming the effects. However, he soon collapses in agony. The investor and soldiers wander the forest without finding their prey, discovering the bodies of their team members in the trees, which terrifies the investor into ordering a retreat. However, the path they came on vanishes, and the forest begins to manifest eerie phenomena, revealing that in the hunt initiated by the investor, Swamp Thing is the real hunter, and the soldiers who fell into the traps were merely weak prey. As the living vines surround everyone, people draw their machetes in defense, but the vines continue to attack relentlessly. Dr. Woodrue slowly stands up, undergoing some mutation and beginning to control plant powers, thrilling him as he prepares to share this experience with his wife. Abby, seeking more clues, plans to visit Caroline Woodrue but realizes something is wrong and immediately calls the hospital, only to be stopped by Dr. Woodrue, and the phone drops to the ground. Meanwhile, the sheriff waits, feeling guilty about everything, when Avery Sunderland unexpectedly shows up. The sheriff tensely draws her gun, but learns from Sunderland that he means no harm and genuinely wants to reconcile, even planning to divorce his current wife to take responsibility as a father and start a happy family life. However, the sheriff shows a fierce expression, unable to forgive Sunderland for turning her son into a murderer and almost killing his own flesh and blood, warning him to stay away from Matt Cable, or she will be forced to take lethal action. Dr. Woodrue continues to experiment with Swamp Thing's organs, infuriating Abby, who condemns his cold actions. Despite not being a true human, Swamp Thing possesses the will of a scientist and is merely a giant plant from the swamp. As Woodrue prepares to feed the organs to his wife, Abby rushes to stop him, but is quickly subdued by him. The police officer arrives following the phone's GPS signal and uses a stun gun, incapacitating Woodrue with high-voltage currents. Exhausted from the fight, the soldiers see the vines receding, possibly to launch a more ferocious attack. The captain orders a retreat, and as they reload, Swamp Thing emerges, unleashing a slaughter. Facing the invincible giant beast, the soldiers flee in terror. Meanwhile, with the help of the police, Abby escapes danger, and Caroline is taken to the hospital for treatment. The news reaches Liz, who checks on the situation, and Dr. Woodrue is arrested, awaiting trial in jail. Matt Cable receives the news and feels a weight lift off his shoulders, hoping his father survives and doesn't die by his hand, causing his mother distress and prompting apologies from her heart. She promises that once Matt fully recovers, they will start anew in a different city. She leaves the hospital relieved as fog begins to envelop the outside, bringing an ominous feeling. Preparing to head home, Lucilia discovers Avery hidden in the back seat, but before she can react, she's stabbed, and Avery seals her fate, sinking the car into the swamp to destroy the evidence as her body undergoes strange transformations, coughing up bizarre plants, seemingly infected by the earlier epidemic. The investor, terrified, scrambles through the forest but is quickly caught by Swamp Thing, who sternly warns him to spread the word of the swamp's events and forbids any further human intrusion, threatening entanglement by the vines. The investor flees, haunted by the encounter, as Swamp Thing roars in anger but gradually finds peace, contemplating leaving the swamp to avoid becoming a monster in people's eyes. Influenced by the scientist's illusion, however, he decides to stay, guarding the swamp against the spread of evil. Abby returns to the swamp's lab, realizing the scientist can't be revived but still cares for Swamp Thing, hoping to remain by each other's side and delve deeper into nature as dark forces grow, preparing for the ongoing battle. Later, when Matt returns to the station, he finds it in disarray, with no colleagues in sight, and the surroundings overrun by eerie plants, leading to the grim discovery of their bodies. Picking up a gun, he confronts Dr. Woodrue, who has undergone a terrifying mutation after consuming the organ samples, gaining the power of nature and a body similar to Swamp Thing's, leaving the deputy in shock before meeting a cold end at Woodrue's hands, concluding the first season. What evil plans will the mutated Dr. Woodrue hatch?